Hello, and welcome to A Critical Dragon, where I talk about narrative in film, television, and in books. You may have noticed a slight change. I'm a little under the weather. I'm not feeling great, but I wanted to try and record a video. So, this is the solution I came up with. What I want to look at today is the opening of Curse of the Mistwraiths by Janny Wurts. It's from book one of an 11-book series, Wars of Light and Shadow. And I wanted to have a look at how Wurts positions the narrative using this prologue. It's a very, very short prologue, and it's quite well written. So let's have a look at it. The wars of light and shadow were fought during the third age of Althera, the most troubled and strife-filled era recorded in all of history. So already we get a nice idea. The Wars of Light and Shadow, that's the name of the series, were fought during the third age of Athera. So we have a place, Athera, but also this sense of ages. That's how they're measuring time, at least in this, which gives a sense of the grand, the epic, that sort of scale. And what is interesting about this is obviously talking about ages immediately casts it in that sort of frame of fantasy. So wars of light and shadow, big mythic concepts. And again, there's going to be an assumption: light good, shadow evil. And it's wars plural. It's not just one battle, it's many. And that is consolidated by the second half of the sentence: the most troubled and strife-filled era recorded in all of history. So this is meant to be the most exciting period, well, for a given value of exciting. But also what's interesting is this is looking at this in the past. This is someone saying these wars were fought during the Third Age. This was the most troubled and strife-filled era. This is all in the past. So we're being told this from a future point. At that time, Arathon, called Master of Shadows, battled the Lord of Light through 5 centuries of bloody and bitter conflict. So our supposition that this is being told sort of retrospectively is true, that here we have the people involved fought through 5 centuries of bloody and bitter conflict. Nice alliteration. But we know that these wars of light and shadows during the Third Age are going to last 500 years, 5 centuries. So that's clearly setting up a very grand scale, epic battle. What is really interesting about this sentence, though: Arathon, called Master of Shadows, battled the Lord of Light. The Lord of Light isn't given a name. The Master of Shadows is given a name. We get Arathon. We get a personal name for the Master of Shadows. That brings us closer to his side, to his point of view, rather than Lord of Light. Because if it was simply the Master of Shadows battled the Lord of Light, those are both abstract, what we would, in terms of psychic distance, refer to as very far away, that we are not connected to them. But as soon as we get that first name, that's the first sort of closing in on one side of this conflict. If the canons of the religion founded during that period are reliable, this is a great sentence, a really nice trick. If the canons of religion founded during that period are reliable. The word if is doing a lot of heavy lifting here, because it is casting doubt on the canons of this religion. It is asking a question about their authenticity, about their veracity, without ever appearing to ask that question. If the canons of the religion founded during that period are reliable, the Lord of Light was divinity incarnate, and the Master of Shadows a servant of evil, spinner of dark powers. So again, we have Lord of Light is not named, is not given a personality or a personhood that we can identify with. It is still this abstract title. And Master of Shadows now is a servant of evil, a spinner of dark powers. There's actually further explanation about who this Master of Shadows is from this questionable source of the canons of the religion. And because the canons of the religion are to be doubted, because of how it was phrased with if the canons, because of that undermining of their authenticity and veracity, we again have this subtle push of the reader toward the side of Arathon, the Master of Shadows. Temple archives attest with grandiloquent force to be the sole arbiters of truth. And again, this is something that is sort of raising the hairs on the back of our neck in terms of, do we trust these people? If the temple archives, this religion, are forcefully declaring themselves as the sole arbiters of truth, that is even more reason to distrust their version of events. Because forcing people to believe that only you are the one who can be trusted to tell the truth, instead of offering up the truth to them, forcing them to believe that seems to go along with this suggestion that maybe, ever so slightly, they might be disingenuous and lying. Yet contrary evidence supports a claim that the master was unjustly aligned with evil. Fragments of manuscripts survive which expose the entire religion of light as fraud and award Arathon the attributes of saint and mystic instead. And here we have the prologue leaning into what we have been kind of intuiting from the information thus far, what it has kind of been hinting at, which is the Temple of Light, this religion, is only one half of the story. It's their version of events. And in fact, there are other versions of this story that suggest that this Arathon, the Master of Shadows, was actually unjustly aligned with evil. That's a curious way to put it, but it is suggesting that Arathon has been maligned, has been made out to be evil when he wasn't, and its fragments of manuscripts survive. So again, this idea of apocryphal evidence has survived, that these sole arbiters of truth, the religion of light, has not been able to destroy all the evidence in order to consolidate their version of events. Some of it has survived, but it is only fragmentary. Because the factual account lay hopelessly entangled between legend and theology, sages in the 7th age meditated upon the ancient past and recalled through visions the events as they happened. So here we have that supposition we had that this entire story was being told retrospectively, that it was being recounted from a distant time period. That has now been confirmed. These events happened in the 3rd age. They happened over 500 years. They are settled. This is history. But in the 7th age, 4 ages later, these mystics, these sages, these wise people have meditated, have sought visions, and have conjured up the events as they occurred, not what was taught in the religion of light, not what was argued against in these fragmented manuscripts, because all of that is tainted between, as they say, legend and theology. The folk tales that historical events build into until they are symbolically remembered and bear only the slightest resemblance to what actually happened. Think of the Iliad. The Iliad referred to a real event, but was told in a mythological way. And theology, that when religion is at the heart of these things, that quite often events are reordered, reshaped, retold, remembered in different ways, emphasized differently, all to put forward the theology of a religion, to consolidate that religion's hold. And what these sages in the seventh age are doing are they are trying to recreate what actually happened, regardless of which side of this war that people were on, regardless of what religion someone is, that they are going to show the events, piece together the events as they occurred. And this is their promise. Contrary to all expectation, the conflict did not begin on the council stair of Itara, or even on the soil of Athera itself. Instead, the visions started upon the wide oceans of the splinter world, Dasan Allure. This is interesting for a couple of different reasons. So, contrary to all expectation, the conflict did not begin on the council stair of Atara. And this is one of these wonderful sort of world building fragments, because this basically implies, yes, you reader, you, the person reading this, you are going to expect this story to begin on the council stair of Atara, because that's the story you know. That's the story you know from legend and theology. But imagine our surprise when we put all of this information together, when we sought these visions. That's not where the story begins. So there is an assumption that the person reading this, that we as reader, we're already familiar with the well-established legend that this is a counter-narrative too. And so that is just a really nice, subtle thing put into the narrative to draw us closer in, to bring the reader in a sense of familiarity. And even referring to the council stair of Atara, or even the soil of Athera itself. So we know it's the third age of Athera is when these wars occurred. We know it's the seventh age of Athera when this story that we are about to experience has been recounted and pieced together. So we know Athera is the place. So we would assume the council stair of Itara is a place on Athera. But what is fascinating here is suddenly this secondary fantasy world, this fantasy land that we think we're going to experience, is placed in something even broader, because there are splinter worlds. There are other worlds being referenced here. This isn't just one world, one planet. This is bigger than that. And it's just dropped in ever so slightly. And by the way, there's a really nice contrast here between the soil of Athera and the wide oceans of the splinter world. So there's a really nice contrast. This is the chronicle the sages recovered. Let each who reads determine the good and the evil for himself. And so we are being assured by this prologue that rather than try to promote one side or the other, they are going to show us what they uncovered. And they absolutely promise and pinky swear that they are not going to manipulate it one way or another. But what we know is this is a narrative that has been pieced together from visions. And we, at this point in time, do not know how much we should trust those visions. Because once all the visions are, oh, this is what happened, and they all get written out, we know this is a constructed narrative. And that means there may be a level of ambiguity riding through the text, because we've already seen in this prologue, ostensibly by these impartial people, that they are already slightly favoring Arathon, the Master of Shadows, over this nameless Lord of Light. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed going through this prologue. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your continued support, and I will see you in the next one.